ESPN confirms that Ole Miss is an elite program. We will explain how next.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast around. I am your host, Stephen Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member. On today's show, we talk about ESPN confirming Ole Miss's place amongst the nation's elite, ranking the Rebels number 16 over the next 2 years in the Power Four, following 3 10-win seasons in the last 4 years. That puts them right in the cusp of where the college football playoff conversation should be. Is it a ranking based on a wide set of metrics? Yeah, sure it is. But it's designed to gauge the staying power across college football. Personally, I think number 16 is a little too low. You might figure that anyway, but I understand where they're actually coming from. We'll dive into why a national outlet is now giving Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss the benefit of the doubt finally, and we'll wrap it up by looking at the true potential of the season, which, if we're being honest, might be a little bit lower than 2026, but is going to be pretty high nonetheless. Remember, we're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. Don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC or Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy offer more perspectives on college football, the SEC, and yes, even potentially Ole Miss as well. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Ole Miss fans, and I am one of them, has spent the better part of the last 50 years looking for validation, seeking validation. And ESPN finally gave Ole Miss the validation that Ole Miss fans really want. Now, there might be a couple of people that says that doesn't mean anything, but it does mean something. And I'll tell you how it means something. Ole Miss has won 10 games, 3 out of the last 4 years. That is not nothing. That is not something you can just shake a stick at and go on about your day. That is a really big accomplishment for a program that before those 3 10-win seasons, I think had done it once before or something like that, before the glory days happened back in the 60s with Johnny Vaught and all of that. Listen, I get that. This is validation. This is a national outlet actually giving the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss, the benefit of the doubt that they will figure it out. Because if you just base it off of returning starters, there is no way that you in your right mind can put Ole Miss as a future top 16 team in all of college football. There's no way you can do it. They would refer to you as people refer to me, as a sunshine pumper. But the fact of the matter is, there's no pump necessary right now in Ole Miss sports. There's sunshine literally everywhere. And ESPN and Adam Rittenberg, when he did his 2-year power ranking of the Ole Miss Rebels, was exactly there. Listen, when you bring it up, their previous future power ranking was 15, so they dropped 1 spot. They do not have a returning quarterback. Jaxson Dart was the number 25 overall selection in the NFL draft after finishing his Ole Miss career with a whopping total for passing yards, 10,617, total offensive yards, touchdown passes. Ole Miss will pass the quarterback torch this fall, and they will pass that quarterback torch to Austin Simmons, who has the potential to be a 1-1 level quarterback for the Ole Miss Rebels. Remember, everybody needs to sit back. And they told me I was crazy when I said in the course of 2023 that Jaxson Dart will break every record just about at Ole Miss. He will be the greatest quarterback statistically in the history of Ole Miss. But nobody else saw that. They were all looking for faults. They were all looking for warts. But I just was able to see a drive, see somebody that knew that things would work out. And once he got going, he got going. but there is no returning quarterback. The quarterback that I'm paying attention to this year is Austin Simmons. This gives Ole Miss a likelihood of a multi-year quarterback. And this is a big deal when it comes to this rankings. When you have multi-year quarterbacks, that means there's a little bit of continuity so they can feel good about ranking you higher whenever Adam Rittenberg is putting this together. And it's very likely that Coach Lane Kiffin has been developing sophomore Austin Simmons to be Dart's likely new successor. He will be his successor. He shouldn't lead the offense for multiple seasons, but Kiffin also has some insurance in Trinidad Chambliss. That is the Ferris State quarterback that led Ferris State to a Division II national title, as well as Oklahoma State transfer Malachi Smith, redshirt freshman A.J. Maddox, who tore a ligament in his hand, I believe, or in his wrist. That's the reason they panicked in the offseason here. But A.J. Maddox will likely, if he's healthy, he's likely going to be the backup because he's a really good player. You see what I'm talking about? Ole Miss doesn't have a quarterback in place. Jaxson Dart was a first-round pick with more production than Ole Miss has ever had. That is not phasing ESPN. They are still willing to rank Ole Miss just as high as they probably would otherwise because of the reputation of roster building that is being developed by Lane Kiffin. He has done an excellent job in the transfer portal. He has owned the title, the Portal King, over the last couple of years, and he's somebody that you just know is going to figure it out. If you heard him talk in the spring, Ole Miss had to go out and get transfer portal cornerbacks and defensive backs. Ole Miss went out and got transfer portal safeties and cornerbacks. It is something that is quite interesting, and a potential starter is in that group, maybe even two potential starters. The kid out of ULM has a chance to be really, really good, I think, for Ole Miss. And then Ricky Fletcher from South Alabama, they brought in, I think it was Chuck Rounsville or Billy Embody, somebody in On 3 talked about how he's absolutely flashing in the postseason workouts. So looking on, there's star power on this Ole Miss team. In Suntaran Perkins, he earned third-team All-SEC honors last year. Yeah, he led the SEC in sacks. He was up there in tackles for loss. He's the leading returner in both. He was only third-team All-SEC a year ago after leading the SEC. And wide receiver will be a spot to watch with Caden Lee, Deshaun Stribling, and Harrison Wallace III. They'll all compete from catches and postseason recognition. Ole Miss added a second-team All-Sun Belt running back in Damian Taylor. That's the running back that came in from Troy. But remember, they brought somebody in from Miami of Ohio that didn't quite work out a year ago. So we are going to wait and see that. He could be very, very good, but we'll wait and see on that one a little bit. And Prince Will, Amon Miel, Patrick Kutas, and Jaden Williams will be in the All-SEC mix. Running back Logan Diggs might be worth watching when he comes back from an ACL injury. At Notre Dame, he was dynamic. In LSU, he was not so much, but that was because they had Jaden Daniels on their roster. The offensive and defensive line outlook, you lose Walter Nolan, you lose Princely and Momielin and Jared Ivey and JJ Pegues, but you still have Xavier Harris, who is an absolute monster. Cam Franklin might be a plug and play into that Jared Ivey position. And Jam Brown, you've heard me talk on this podcast many times that Jam Brown, who was a freshman All-American, he has a chance to be fairly elite. There's several pass rushing departures. Deshaun Womack, Prince Will, Amon Mielen, they're all going to be competing with Suntaran Perkins for that pass rusher. The offensive line will likely be fluid this season. Both tackles are back, Diego Pounds and Jaden Williams. Patrick Kutas came in from Arkansas. He's a stud. He's an absolute monster. And they also, on ESPN, they really like Delano Townsend. Lane Kiffin and his roster management, fantastic. Ole Miss had a terrific, most talented roster it's had in decades, fell short of the college football playoff. That's something that Lane Kiffin needs to work out, or it will become a trend of him not being able to win the big game. I just did air quotes on that. But they signed Deshaun Stribling, Harrison Wallace III, Caden Lee will be back. Suntarine Perkins, Daquan Wright. There's a lot of star power returning on this Ole Miss team. And when you look at the coaching staff, they have an interesting roster that they're having to reset after losing so many top-level talents. The coaches will do so without dealing with so much change, as it coordinators in Pete Golding and Charlie Weiss Jr. are back, alongside with most of the position coaches. I think all of the position coaches. Lane Kiffin has done a nice job of keeping assistants amid a successful stretch on the field. Really interesting stuff. ESPN is giving Ole Miss the benefit of the doubt. That is the point on this. The acknowledgement that Ole Miss fans have been wanting for decades, it is here. And this Ole Miss team, and they think in the next 2 years, is going to be on the cusp of the playoffs and likely competing for it when they have the better team in 2026. And we will go over one thing, just one thing, that is standing in the way of being a really good player. It's wild that being ranked number 16 over two years feels low, but that's the standard that Lane Kiffin has built at Ole Miss. Now the only thing left to do is win something big. Stick around for more. There's nothing like the NBA playoffs, the intensity, the buzzer beaters, the fans losing their mind. It's the kind of atmosphere that you must experience live. And this year's matchups are already delivering. If you want in, Game Time makes it fast and easy to get seats even for the biggest playoff game. Prices on the app actually drop closer to tip-off, and with killer last-minute deals, panoramic seat views, and no surprise fees, Game Time is a total game changer. I was just on the app looking for zone deals for the Club World Cup, and they were offering 10% exclusive zone deals for that Club World Cup. Pretty cool indeed. I saw Seattle lost against Botafogo, but it was the first real game that I think that MLS teams have played against European teams as well. So I love that I can see my exact view before I buy. No surprises. The apps makes it ridiculously simple. 2 taps and I am done. And with Game Time's guarantee, you know that you're getting the best deal. If you find a better deal in the same row and section, they'll credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's all one word for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. One really cool thing that we can look at is last season was a season that Ole Miss went 10-3, missed the playoff, but due to the talent of the roster, we just admit to the fact that it was one of the biggest chokes in Ole Miss history. Ole Miss was expected to go to the playoffs. They were good enough to make the playoffs, and they just flubbed it for whatever reason. We're not really here to get into that. But this Ole Miss team in 2024 honestly laid the groundwork for 2025 and beyond. And all that is left for Lane Kiffin is to win something, whether a playoff game, an SEC championship game. That needs to happen for Lane Kiffin to take the next step in his coaching trajectory. He will go for it from a good to a great coach the moment he makes the college football playoff, the moment he goes to the SEC championship game, because if you go to the SEC championship game, you're going to go to the playoff. A little bit lower bar right now with the playoff being within reach. Lane Kiffin needs to get there, and he has a quarterback that has the talent to make that happen. This, to me, feels familiar to the Tennessee team in 97 and 98. In 97, they were quarterbacked by Peyton Manning. Everybody thought they had a chance to win a national title. They fell a little bit short, ended up going to the Orange Bowl, got crushed by Nebraska. That was the last game for Peyton Manning, who was a generational quarterback, the best to ever do it at the University of Tennessee. But the next year, the quarterback that took over was a quarterback named T. Martin. He, with Peyton Manning being there, not many people heard of him or knew all about him or expected that many great things. But he went on to go completely undefeated. He went on to set the record for consecutive completed passes against South Carolina. You can look that up if you want to. He broke that record. This Tennessee team actually really started to play well. And this was the year that David Cutcliffe, right after that, ended up at Ole Miss. 98, obviously, famously, was the Pine Box year for Tommy Tuberville. So I think this season has a chance to work a little bit like that because you don't have the pressure and the weight of the expectations. And if Ole Miss can get rolling, which their schedule kind of allows to happen, you've got 5 games to get where you want to be. And at the end of September, you could be 3-0 in the SEC and absolutely ready to roll. I think should be the goal for the 2025 team. 2026 is going to be a better roster than 2025. It just is. The younger players are going to be a bit more mature. Ole Miss went out in the transfer portal after players that had multiple years of eligibility. You're going to have second-year players out of the transfer portal. And with Austin Simmons coming back with a year under his belt, and Kewan Lacey and Shakai Mills-Knight, and those guys filling out with the receivers that were recruited, Winston Watkins, Caleb Cunningham, those guys, it's not going to take much for them to be better than they are this year, even though this year is going to be a very good team. Even though this year has a chance to make the college football playoff. This year, they're going to have to work for it. This year, they probably need some breaks. Next year, they are going to be a roster similar to the 2024 season. That is the reason why ESPN was so favorable to the Ole Miss Rebels in the future power rankings. I think they ranked Auburn in like the 30th or something like that. They ranked Ole Miss at number 16. And a lot of that has to do with the level of roster building that's going on at Ole Miss. It should be really cool to see. There's some things that have to hit in 2025. Absolutely have to hit. But if whatever happens in 2026 for that season, they're the holes that you have to plug because there's not going to be a glaring need. There's not going to be a high dollar thing that you have to go after, especially if you land Williams out of Florida, the rush in, the guy that went on the official visit to Florida this past weekend. If you can land him as a replacement for Suntarine Perkins, you can do a lot of the same stuff that you're planning to do anyway. The front seven is going to be good. They're going to be a solid, salty run defense for the Ole Miss Rebels. I think the offensive line is going to be a little bit better. We're going to talk about that in the next segment. Last year, I think they just made a mistake, as pure and simple as that. Not necessarily anything you can do except blame them, but they made a mistake with how they were evaluating what was going on and a little bit of panic that set in the running back room. So we'll see exactly how it looks for the Rebels in 2025. But Lane Kiffin winning something and getting to a playoff, the sooner it happens, the better off he's going to be. And Lane Kiffin, I think, is an elite football coach, but he has to win that game and get over those hurdles before he becomes universally recognized as an elite football coach. Right now in the SEC, he's somewhere around 5th or 6th. He goes to the playoff or he goes to the SEC championship game, you are going to instantly see that man go up to 3rd or 2nd or something like that. You're not passing Kirby Smart. But I think that is huge for Lane Kiffin. I think he has the quarterback that can do it. I think there's a variability of skills at the running back position. I think this offensive line is going to be better. They're going to be better stopping the run. The question for this team is going to be the defensive backfield. But I'm hearing good things. But this is the time of year that I always hear good things. So we'll see exactly how it goes for the Ole Miss Rebels. In our final segment, 2025 might not have the ceiling of 2026, but the foundation has to be set now. What pieces need to come together for a run? We will talk about that coming up next. All right, so 2025, we talked about it. 2026 is this team's going to be really good, especially in the age if the transfer portal and stuff doesn't jump up and get you, if Lane Kiffin is still here. There are ifs and balls, but if you look at just the trajectory of the team from one year to the next, 2026 is going to be really good. So 2025 can be really good, but you need some breaks and you need to hit on a lot of the players. I'll put this in perspective. After Quinshon Judkins, if Quinshon Judkins had stayed at the University of Mississippi and went into last season, he likely would have won the national title either way. Him going to Ohio State or him going to Ole Miss, because he was the missing piece for that team. He was the player that could make people miss when the offensive line couldn't quite get there. He was perfectly made for what Ole Miss did. To put that in perspective, against Penn State the year before, the game that they didn't help him up and a whole bunch of crap was going on and you were ticked off about what was happening, he still ran for over 100 yards against the number one defense in all of college football. Ole Miss ran the ball against the number one defense in all of college football. That is how that looked. Ole Miss took advantage of that defense. Jaxson Dart had a career day, but Quinshon Judkins was kind of the battering ram, and they figured out how to handle that defense. So when Quinshon Judkins left in the end of 2023 and went to Ohio State, Ole Miss panicked. They did. They rushed out and they signed Ulysses Bentley IV, the collective, got him to come back to school. He came back to school a little bit overweight, apparently, and they couldn't get past that over the course of the whole season. Don't want to talk about it. They mismanaged the running back room that year. They mismanaged it during the season, and they mismanaged it after Quinshon Judkins left. When Quinshon Judkins left, they panicked. Dominic Thomas, all of those guys that they brought in to back up, at that point, Henry Parrish, who was a pretty good little back. If he wouldn't have torn his ACL against Arkansas, Ole Miss would have likely made the playoff. It was a series of unfortunate events. You lose Parrish, you lose Trey Harris, that made it a little bit more difficult, and you took away the margin for error. So if you have a bad moment, like Jaxson Dart against Florida, and his last three drives were the worst three drives in his career at Ole Miss. If that's happening, what are you going to do? How does that work out? You no longer have that margin for error, and you let Florida stay close, and they made a couple of plays, and the next thing you know, you end up losing that ball game. This year, the running back room for me is more thoughtfully put together. Logan Diggs, who did not play all of last year with an ACL, he's going to be 20 months into his recovery by the start of football season. He went through fall camp. I'm expecting him to be fine in that. It's usually about a year-long injury. He's going to make it. Kewan Lacey, he's the guy that was on social media during all of spring practice. They were really propping him up a little bit. And Shakai Mills-Knight, who is that bigger back that has a chance to be extremely special and somebody that can work behind an offensive line that's you're a little bit unsure about. Both tackles are slated to be there, Diego Pounds and Jaden Williams. Patrick Kutas, one of the best offensive linemen in the entirety of the transfer portal. Bryson Sanders, the kid from Chattanooga, is going to come in and start at center. And that leaves that left tackle. It could be P.J. Wilkins. It could be Delano Townsend. It could be anybody. They're going to have to compete for the right combination of what's going to go on. I think this offensive line this year is going to be better than it was a year ago. And the reason I think that is because I think they just went too all in on size with a motion-based offensive line unit. They ran predominantly zone schemes where that requires the offensive line to move a little bit. You could get a little bit too big to where you're not quite athletic enough to get there and make blocks, especially when you're going to the second level or something like that. And I think because of that, they're going to get a little smaller this year. I think Diego Pounds and Jaden Williams are going to be a little bit smaller. Patrick Kutas, he's going to be right about 310 as opposed to 330. That is what we're going to see on the offensive line. And once that happens, they're going to be able to use zone schemes just like they always do, and the running game is going to look like it always has. I am fully expecting that. At wide receiver and tight end, I have no worries whatsoever. They're going to figure it out. With Austin Simmons and the weapons they have on the outside, I feel sorry for the other team occasionally. Jaxson Dart liked to duck and chuck it a little bit. He'd throw it and force it downfield from time to time to Trey Harris because he knew that Trey could Megatron it and go up and make a catch. Austin is going to just drive the ball down the field. He's going to take what's there. He's already graduated from college as a sophomore. He's going to get it figured out and figure it out pretty quickly. I think this team has a chance to be a defensive unit at the beginning of the year. I think the defense is going to carry this team, and especially the front seven. And I say front seven, I just basically mean run defense. You're going to see a situation to where you have a lot of 2nd and 10s. They are good on the defensive line. Xavion Harris, Jam Brown, William Eccles, Cam Franklin, who has a chance to be a star. Everybody assumed it would be just Sean Womack starting over there at that jumbo end position. Cam Franklin is making some strides from what I hear throughout spring and throughout summer camp. And then you have Santarin Perkins and you have Prince Will Amamiellan. You have a lot of weapons on the defensive line or in the front seven. The linebackers are going to be very good. TJ Jottery is going to be the leader. He was the guy that was calling signals a year ago. He was the number one linebacker, even though Chris Paul ended up doing better and going to the NFL and first team all SEC and all of that. Daughtery was the guy that was running the back end of that defense. Now the back five, the pass defense, that is where we're in wait and see mode. We are genuinely in wait and see. I can't find any reason necessary to hype up. I like Sage Ryan. I think Jalen Braxton, he's going to be the number one corner and the replacement for Trey Amos. Who's going to be on the other side? Is it going to be Chris Graves? Is it going to be Ricky Fletcher? Is it going to be Sage Ryan, or is Sage Ryan going to be playing in the back three in the safety positions, the kid from ULM, and they're going to replace what's happening on that end of the ball? I think it's important because John Saunders was a low-key, massive influence on this defense last year. And if you know ball, you know that. You know that John Saunders was probably one of the top 2 or 3 players on that entire defense over the course of the last 2 years. So we'll see if there's a replacement for him. I'm hoping the ULM guy can go there and maybe Sage Ryan plays at a free safety position. We'll see what it looks like. But if you look at it, all of this is being taken into account by ESPN, who ranked Ole Miss in the top 16 nationally. Really, really great stuff. So thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your go-to source for Ole Miss. We pride ourselves in offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the front door of Ole Miss. Your support means the world to us. For your second listen, check out the Portal Show. Brian Smith has the latest rumors, portal entries, and signings. Be the fan with the most knowledge on the rapid changes on the college football landscape. Find the Portal on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hotty toddy, everybody. And remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.